Every year, it's the same story at the MOSCONI Cup. We get all excited with the lineups and the trash talking, and then Europe wins. Again. And every year, I see the same comments on social media. One country against 44, one country versus one continent, a whole continent versus the US, 745 million versus 330 million. Maybe try continent versus continent instead of continent versus country. You get the idea. And I guess if you're just looking at the numbers, this might seem like a good argument, but in reality, it's actually a really bad one. I think it's fair to say that in recent years, Europe has dominated the MOSCONI Cup. In fact, since 2010, Europe has won the MOSCONI Cup every single year except for 2018 and 2019. That's a 14-2 run that includes 5 years of utter demolition. If we add up all the points during this 16-year period, the total score is 171 for Europe and a mere 95 for the USA. So in that context, I think it's fair to ask, what is going on? Why is Europe head and shoulder above the USA? And one of the explanations that keeps coming up among the fans is the total population of each side. And to be fair, it is a logical argument. The USA has a population of about 350 million people, while Europe has more than double with 750 million. So, statistically speaking, Europe has a larger pool of people and therefore is more likely to produce top-level players. Although this makes sense mathematically, it is completely the wrong way to look at it. It's way too simplistic. Think about it for a minute. By the same logic, the countries with the largest population in the world should be dominating the pool scene, right? Well, here are the top 10 most populated countries in the world. You tell me, do you think the best pool players come from there? Can you name one player from India, Brazil, Pakistan or Nigeria who has won a major pool tournament in the last 20 years? You can't, because there isn't one. So it's pretty obvious that the difference in total population alone cannot explain why the USA is getting battered every year. Okay, then the next logical argument is that Europe has a larger pool of active players. And by active players, I don't mean the casual Friday night drunk player at the local bar who puts his drink on the rail and bridges with the cue between his knuckles. I'm talking about people that actively take up the game of pool as a hobby. People who play some kind of competition in local leagues or tournaments. So, do we think this is a better explanation? Is the pool of active players larger in Europe compared to the USA? Well, let's look at the numbers available to us. In the USA, pool is structured around amateur leagues like the APA, BCA, VNEA, and a few others. And the one I just mentioned claimed to have 425,000 members in total. Now, I'm aware many players might be members of multiple leagues, and I'm also aware that there are a lot more players that are not members of any league at all, but would still be considered active players because they do play tournaments. But overall, I think we can all agree, based on this number, that there are at the very least 500,000 active players in the USA. That is the equivalent of 1 in every 700 American being an active pool player. In Europe, most countries don't have equivalents to these amateur leagues. Let's look at a country like France, for instance. The pool landscape is such that you will find a few pool halls around the major cities, but the rest of the country will mostly have private clubs. Those clubs are affiliated with the French Federation of Billiards. And to play in those clubs, you need to pay for a yearly license and be a member of the federation. So we can look at the number of registered licenses to get an idea of the number of active players. As you can see on the French Federation of Billiards website, there are around 20,000 registered players in France. For a country of 69 million people, that's 1 in 3,450 French people being an active pool player. But wait, that includes snooker players, English pool players, and carom players. So if I narrow it down to just American pool players, that's right, only about 900. Or 1 in 77,000 French people being an active pool player. And keep in mind that France accounts for close to 10% of the European population. So this already gives you a bit of an idea of the popularity of American pool in Europe. In most European countries, snooker, English pool and carom are way more popular than American pool. Now let's zoom back out of France and look at the number of registered players in all the national federations across Europe. Doing that, I get to a total of about 41,000 players out of 750 million Europeans. Think about that for a second. That is 1 in 18,300 Europeans being an active pool player. According to the EPBF, half of that is from Germany, where there is a very well organized league run by the National Federation. Germany has a population of about 85 million people, so 20,000 registered players means 1 every 4,250 German is an active pool player. And Germany is clearly a country where pool is very popular, as demonstrated by the number of top-level German players right now. We know the Germans tend to be very well organized and tidy, but maybe the rest of Europe isn't, and maybe the numbers for the rest of Europe are completely off. So let's be extremely generous here. Let's take the German number 1 in 4,250 and let's apply it to the whole of Europe. That still gives us a pool of players of only 175,000 compared to the 500,000 from the US. And remember, the 500,000 from the US is a conservative estimation, really, while the 175,000 from Europe is a very aggressive estimation. I know some people will argue that those numbers are not 100% accurate, and they would be right. We are dealing with incomplete data here, but I think that I was able to put together enough to paint a pretty clear picture. Yes, Europe has a larger total population. But no, Europe does not have a larger pool of players to pick from for the MOSCONI Cup. In the end, I think the reality is a lot more complex than most Facebook comments make it out to be. This is a multi-variable problem. I don't think we can point to one single thing and say that is why Europe is dominating the USA. No, I think there are many things to take into consideration. 1. The USA is dominated by 7-foot bar tables, but the MOSCONI Cup and all the WPA tournaments are played on 9-footers. 2. Most local leagues and tournaments use handicaps that slow down player development and discourage a truly competitive mindset. 3. The pool culture in the US has historically been associated with drinking, gambling and hustling, while in Europe the game is more often viewed as a serious discipline, meaning that people approach it the same way they approach other competitive activities like basketball or chess. 4. Other variants of the game like snooker, carom and English pool, being so present in Europe, also help create more complete players with better fundamentals. 5. And finally, we have to mention the format of the MOSCONI Cup. Short races with alternate break are basically a coin toss at that level. If you look at the stats, you'll notice that over 20% of all the matches have gone to heel in the last 15 years. This means the lag is arguably the most important shot of each match. Of course, you'll tell me it's the same for both sides. Yeah, sure, but it means that luck is a big factor in this format. And that's really it, that's my 2 cents. Let me know in the comments what's your take on this. Why do you think the USA is struggling to compete with Europe at the MOSCONI Cup?